Hello and welcome back to Nerd News Today, Toy Fair 2021. And now joining me on the other side of the screen, we have here today to talk to us about NecroMolds, Mr. Clint Bohaty. Clint, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Matthew?
I'm great, thanks so much. So yeah, I first found out about NecroMolds when you guys were doing the Kickstarter. It was an amazing campaign. You guys have such a unique and interesting concept for this game. I really can't wait to talk to you about it. But before we dive into that, first things first, what was your favorite toy as a kid growing up?
Ooh, that's a great question. The toy that I find most memorable was the Mighty Max toy series. I loved Mighty Max. And I remember having at my grandparents' cabin, I had the giant dragon skull Mighty Max playset where the gums move out, and it's like I think it was one of the bigger play sets that Mighty Max made in the 90s. And like I just loved Mighty Max.
Oh, yeah, I remember that playset. I didn't have it. I had a friend who did, and I was so jealous of that thing. That was an enormous playset. But
I started going down nostalgia lane. I started rebuying some of my favorite childhood toys recently. So I have a few little like Mighty Max toys set up around my desk, as well as some of the other things that I remember from growing up.
the Mighty Max is expensive now too. Those things went way up in value.
Oh yeah, I don't think I'll be able to collect them all, and also keep a roof over my head. So
Very true. Now, since you are a board game maker now, what was your favorite board game as a kid? Did you play a lot of board games growing up?
that's a good question. You know, we didn't play. I don't remember playing a lot of board games by the rules growing up. I can tell you that. I remember we would buy board games, and a lot of times I would play with board games more as a toy. So like the earliest ones I remember playing are like the classics, like Don't Break the Ice, right? Where it's almost like you're just playing with a toy and there's a game overlaid on top of it. But then there are other games like Mousetrap I loved because it was so, all the little contraptions and like the little Rube Goldberg type feel that game has. So all of those, like those toys as games classics from like Hasbro and Mattel were some of my favorites growing up.
Yeah, same here. I had any board games that I did have. I was for the most part getting the ones that had like lots of little miniatures. I was just playing with those. I didn't care about the actual game. You,
Oh, totally. Yeah, the rules went out the window. It's just basically like a box of fun toys that all had the same theme.
Yep.
And then I would just like whatever I wanted to do with them, that was the fates would decide.
Now we're here today to talk about NecroMolds, and everybody watching at home, you guys can see in the bottom corner of Clint's screen there, we've actually got it right there. So we're gonna go. Yeah, there it is. Look at that. That's a beautiful looking game too. Everything's so cool about that. My goodness, yeah. But yeah, let's talk first though about the fact that you did a Kickstarter here, and what's amazing about this Kickstarter is you funded the game in 12 hours, and not only that, by the end of it, you more than doubled your goal. So that is an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. A lot of work went into getting that to actually succeed. And it was always a big question mark, right? Essentially, we started advertising. I'd been working on the game for a couple of years, and we didn't really start showing it off to the world until 3 months before our Kickstarter campaign. And it was the very first campaign I've ever run. And so it was a lot of firsts. And we also knew that we were asking for quite a bit of money. Our initial goal was 50,000. And I did a lot of research into how much board games typically raise, especially in their first Kickstarter. And 50,000 was a big ask. And I wasn't sure if we would get there. And when the first day happened and the backers started rolling in, and just seeing the excitement of people who were backing it and who had been watching our campaign for the last 3 months, after 12 hours, we felt really good because we knew that we had tapped into something that other people were just as excited about as we were, and it was going to be a real game.
And we should mention also that the game is now available for pre-order as well. So if you missed out on the Kickstarter, you have a chance still to buy it. We'll talk about that later. But before we start making the sell here, let's actually talk about the game. Let's show off the game. So can you tell us first, what is the story of NecroMolds?
Yeah, so the story of NecroMolds, I'll tell it a little bit, and then I'll switch to my close-up view. So the story behind NecroMolds is that there is an evil alchemist named Basalt LeSueur. And Basalt LeSueur is kind of our overarching bad guy. And he has discovered a way to raise golems up out of the ground and basically create an army of golems to try to take over the world. And the reason that NecroMolds are spell books that contain evil golem monsters. And they've been around for a long time. But the reason that no one and no wizard has ever dared touch the NecroMolds is that to raise a NecroMold, you would lose a piece of your own essence or soul. So to bring life into that dead clay, you would lose a little part of yourself. And that was too much of an ask for most wizards. But Basalt LeSueur through some deeper lore that's not out there yet, but will be expanded upon in the future, was able to craft the caster ring, which is a toy in the game, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, in a little bit. And the caster ring is what gives Basalt Lesueur in any wizard the ability to summon a NecroMold without risking their own lives. So you summon up NecroMold armies and you battle each other on the battlefield, and in the end see which wizard rules the day. So that's a little sliver of the lore that we have and we are writing currently for NecroMolds. And we have a lot of ideas on how we can expand upon it, and I'm excited to get there. But it all starts with this game.
Yeah, I really like this backstory to everything, and I also love just how much of a 90s throwback this game is too. I mean, just the colors, the look, the concept, everything about it. This is perfect for me and what I grew up with. So yeah, why don't we go ahead? Let's jump into a demonstration now. Would you mind showing us a little bit more about all the pieces here? And that's such a beautiful
certainly.
board. Again, I'm just head over heels over all the parts of your game.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for anyone who's watching, definitely if you check out our pre-order page, especially if you go to our Kickstarter page, you'll see some better images of the actual board art. And our artist, Thad Stalmack, did an awesome job on all of our monsters and in the board and all of our pieces. So to walk through the actual game, a lot of it feels like we were talking about a little earlier about playing with board games as toys. And that general concept went a lot into the making and design of NecroMolds. So I wanted it to be as rules light as possible. So when you're playing the game, the rules take a backseat to the fun of actually experiencing the gameplay. So the very first thing, which is the most important and I think the most fun, is our NecroMold spell books. So let me move that nice and close. So there's a NecroMold spell book there for you. And this is one that comes in our battle box. And this is the Mud Mump spell book. And inside each spell book, you will see is a monster mold. So this one, the Mud Mumps, actually has 2 cavities. So there's 2 different monsters you can make in this single spell book. And then on the back of each spell book is the monster's stats in battle. So everything you really need to control these monsters is located on the toy. And I'll go ahead, I'll make a monster after we walk through all the pieces, because that's always the most fun. So spell books, and in series 1, we have 11 spell books total, and 3 of them come in the battle box. So just to show off 2 more, we've got Insectomite, which is kind of a giant insect-like golem, comes in the battle box, and so does Grave Ghoul, which is essentially if a wizard raised a golem out of a graveyard, what it might look like. So Grave Ghoul also comes in that starter set battle box. The rest of the components are, we have command dice, and command dice have 4 different symbols on them. There's movement, there's ranged attack, there is magic activation, so a little magic symbol, and then finally there's a wild symbol or a star. And how the game plays is, in the game, each player is rolling 4 of these command dice at the beginning of a round, and then you look at your results and you assign them to the back of your spell books. So on the bottom of each spell book, you'll see those same symbols, and they'll tell you how many times the monster could move on a turn and how far the monster could move or how far they could attack. So you're essentially rolling these actions, assigning the actions to the spell books in your army. And then, of course, you have to do those actions. And to do those actions, NecroMolds actually is it's like a introduction to miniature wargaming and my favorite parts about miniature wargaming, which one of them is movement. So a lot of games you'll play have grids on the board. So you'll move 3 spaces. Sometimes they're hexes, sometimes they're squares. My favorite thing about wargaming is how the battlefield is open for you. So you can move your minions wherever you want, and there's no restrictions. So in NecroMolds, each player gets this triangle measurement or distance tool is what it's called. And there are 3 distances in the game. There's close, which is the shortest edge, medium, which is the medium length edge, and of course a far distance, which is the longest edge. And in the game, you're essentially using this as a distance tool to say, if my monster can move a far distance, this is how far they can move, and they can move up to that edge. So that is how movement happens, and you use this tool for ranged attacks as well when judging who you can hit. And then, of course, the real final element is your combat dice. So we have these custom D8 combat dice, and each player essentially will roll a pool of these dice based on their monster stats, and then you count up your hits, depending on if you're attacking or defending, and the player who gets the most hits wins combat. And of course, the most fun part is that when you win combat, you smash your opponent's monster. So as I make I'll go ahead and make a monster right now. And then while I'm doing that, Matthew, I don't know if you have any questions on anything that I just covered.
I just think it's really cool. Such a great concept. I mean, it's basically like you said, it's essentially an introduction to mini wargaming. So this is kind of like if Warhammer 40K met with Grape Escape and they had a baby, and that baby was really into creepy crawlers. That's kind of my idea behind it.
Oh, totally. You basically just like summarized myself as a person who loves toys and games. So much of NecroMolds was influenced by games of my childhood and like the attitudes behind those games. So Creepy Crawlers was a huge influence. I love miniature wargaming, but sometimes I want to play in a way that plays more like, or that feels more like playing with toys. And I don't want to damage my minis, right? Because I take a lot of pride in painting my minis. So I wanted a way that I could play with younger kids, introduce them to wargaming and everything that I love about wargaming in a way that only takes about 30 minutes to play.
So yeah, we didn't even ask yet, I mean, because you're doing this board game here. Do you have any experience designing toys? Was this the first time you did something like this?
Oh, that's a great question. So prior to NecroMolds, I had experience in game design. So by trade, I do filmmaking. So filmmaking is my trade. And I got into game design about 5 years ago and designed a game called Hounded that Atlas Games published. And it's still available today. And NecroMolds I had a few games that I tinkered with in between that game and this one, but none of them really clicked for me 100% like this one did. But as far as toy design goes, I had not had any real experience with toy design. So a lot of my process in making this was actually learning CAD, and working through CAD software. Oh gosh, my cat is attacking my blinds. So a lot of it was just learning CAD, learning the requirements behind injection molding. That was a huge one. And then basically working through 3D modeling.
And we should add to that you're doing this also right now. It's still during the pandemic. Like that's when production of this game was happening, is during the pandemic, which is like the hardest time to be dealing with factories overseas.
Oh yeah. That's been, doing a Kickstarter is always a huge learning process. And even the manufacturing in a normal year is difficult, right? Especially when it's the first time you're doing it. Unfortunately, a lot of delays just because of COVID. I was hoping this would be out by fall, and now backers are going to be getting it essentially in April. But the thing I'm really excited about is the extra time we've had to develop the game because of COVID. We've put into making sure that all of our dice look great, our minis look awesome. So you can kind of see one of our mud mumps there holding a sword. And then here is the other mud mump that comes out of the spell book. He's holding 2 battle axes, one in each hand. All right. And then, of course, the most fun part is the caster ring, which I'll use this one. So here's a close-up of the caster ring for you, Matthew. And let's see if it'll focus for me. Where's my middle? There we go. So there's a close-up of our caster ring. This one has a scorpion in the center. So there are 22 unique caster rings total. 2 of them come in the battle box, and then the rest of them, the remaining 20, are randomized inside of our monster packs. So each time you buy a monster pack, or whenever you buy a monster pack, it comes with a random caster ring. And the caster rings come in 2 colors. There is our basalt color, which is this green and like a warm gray color scheme. And then there is, of course, being in the 90s, there is a glow in the dark, all glow in the dark option. So singular color. So 20 different designs in 2 different colors. Let's smash a mud mump. All right, here we go. There's one. We'll do a different ring.
And that's so satisfying to watch also. So how would this actually play out in a game now? Like if you're actually doing this with someone else, like where does the smashing of the monsters come into play?
Yeah, so whenever your monsters get into melee combat, which means that both of them have run into each other on the battlefield, you've moved your monster into an enemy monster. That initiates melee combat. Both players roll their combat dice, and then whoever wins the melee combat smashes the enemy's monster with their caster ring. And a cool thing is that the clay actually stays on the board and becomes essentially rough terrain or terrain that you can't end your turn on. So as the game progresses, there's more and more of these smashed monsters on the battlefield, and movement becomes more and more restricted as those smashed monsters pile up. And you can see, of course, it's going to be a little small on this lens, but we'll see if it'll focus for us. There we go. But we have a scorpion there. And then we have the other ring that I used was a lamprey. And they're a little small in the camera, but if you check out our Kickstarter updates or our Facebook page, you'll see nice high-res close-up photos of those caster ring smashes.
So that's such an awesome demonstration there of how the game works, and just seeing all the working pieces too. Like again, I'm just blown away by how good it looks, and especially just how that came all together to look. I mean, it's a wonderful looking game. It sounds like it's a lot of fun to play. I cannot wait to actually do that myself. But there's also another way to play the game too, because you guys are part of the tabletop simulator, right?
Yeah. So I actually ported all of the game into Tabletop Simulator. The primary reason being I needed a way to prototype with other people for expansions, new monsters, things like that during the time of the pandemic. So yes, so everything is up on Tabletop Simulator. It's not public yet though. So it hasn't been made public, but I plan to sometime after the release of the physical game.
I know I've seen on your social media pages a lot that you are streaming some gameplay as well, so folks can actually see a much more in-depth play of the game there, and they can even watch it live and I guess interact with you too, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I love to have, we usually stream through Facebook. So if you're interested, check out our Facebook page and follow it. And every once in a while, we'll do a live stream during our tabletop simulator games. And you can throw up questions in the chat or just say hi. And I'm always keeping an eye on that and engaging with people as we play and virtually smash monsters.
Now you mentioned about the growing story of the world of NecroMolds and other different caster rings. So, can you tell us any news for 2021 or maybe 2022 about maybe who else will be joining, any other expansions? What are kind of the plans for once this game is done?
Yeah. So really the way that I've always viewed NecroMolds, this base game, which is, the battle box, we have 4 monster pack expansions that come out with it. As well as a few little accessories like our deluxe distance tool that you'll see in the lower corner there. So the way I've always seen it as this is like our starting point. This is the base game with a really nice foundation that plays really well and is fun. So the things that I've been focusing on are how do I build up from that? So we have some new Series 2 monsters that we've been working on illustrating and designing. And trying to design their abilities to be even more interactive with the other monsters. So more to give the player more combo possibilities on the battlefield. We've also been exploring a new larger expansion, which adds a lot more decision-making to the game and is just like a really fun way to build off of both the lore and the gameplay of this base game. And that is something that I'm hoping to come out with in 2021. Probably as a Kickstarter or some kind of on one of those platforms, just because we want to make sure we can order enough of them at once. But all of those ideas depend on us making this box set in this first game a success, so then we can forge forward with these other ideas.
Now we should mention too the dough that you're using, because you can't legally call it, play-doh, because it's not what it is. Is this a proprietary kind of a dough blend that you guys are using for this, and is it included with the games?
Yes, great question. So this is spell clay is what we have, spell clay, which feels very similar to Play-Doh, but it is not. We have our own supplier for clay, and clay does come with the battle box. So the battle box comes with my favorite 2 colors, purple and green, come inside the battle box, and it's about 3.5 ounces that each player gets of clay, which makes a pretty nice army. It's usually around a 6 to 10 unit army per side. And so clay comes in the battle box, but also our monster packs, we include clay with as well. So every time you buy a monster pack, it includes another canister of clay. And the monster packs come with more colors. So there's blue, there's red, I believe there's a yellow and an orange. So there's 4 different colors with our 4 different monster packs, which are available. But you can use any kind of clay with NecroMolds. So you don't have to use spell clay. I designed it in a way that's the most universal. So you can go to your local big box store, pick up whatever cheap soft clay you want, and jump straight into the game with that.
It's very cool. So can you tell us now, for anybody out there who wants to get their hands on this game, where can they go to pick it up?
Right now, especially if you happen to be watching internationally, the best thing you could do right now is do our late pledge via Kickstarter. So if you go to Kickstarter, there's a big button at the top that says, pre-order now. And if you click on that button, you can place the pre-order through BackerKit for NecroMolds Series 1. You can just grab the base game. You can grab a collection set that includes all of the expansions in the base game. Otherwise, I think at the end of February, at the latest, pre-orders will be closing because that's when we're going to officially start. We'll be officially starting the shipping process. So as soon as our product starts shipping, we'll close the pre-orders. And then it won't be available again for probably a month and a half or 2 months. So probably late April, it'll be retail available online from necromolds.com.
So that's very exciting. I can't wait again to get my hands on this. I missed out on the Kickstarter foolishly, so I'm happy I still have a chance to actually get in on this because I've been watching the progress of the game. And my honestly, like my big thing for not getting it yet was because where am I going to put it? But now after seeing this, I'm going to make room. I'm going to make space for it. I'll find a way to get this thing. So for folks out there who do want to pick it up, we're going to have links to that in the YouTube description here. We're going to have links to all of the NecroMolds social media pages as well. So you could check out Clint playing the game. You could see all the updates about it and everything else that they're going to be doing for this year and beyond. So Clint, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. You guys have a great success story, and I look forward to hearing much more about your games in the many, many years to come.
Thank you very much. So one question for you. So what was your favorite toy growing up?
I wasn't expecting anybody to ask me that. Oh, geez, I got to think about that now. I'd probably say my Kenner Ecto 1. That's the first one that comes in my head right now is the Kenner Ecto 1. And that was absolutely probably my favorite. I remember I had a lot of good memories with it. And now today as an adult, I've got basically anytime someone makes an Ecto 1, I've got to get it.
I think I actually got one of those at a garage sale as a kid. I remember getting it. And I think it came it might have been a Ghostbusters Play-Doh set. Actually, I remember there was
a Ghostbusters Play-Doh set with the Ecto 1. Yeah. And on the top, it had a ghost in there. You can make a ghost to the mold in the very top section where the lights are.
That's cool. That was it. I got that at a garage sale. I remember that now. Very cool. Well, thank you very much for your time, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you, Clint. Thank you so much for chatting with us today. So everybody out there, go ahead, check out NecroMolds. Don't forget, again, we have all the links right below. Stick around. There's more nerd news today. Toy Fair 2021 coming right up.